I'm going to put the neck on this D-18 1939 authentic. I have a video on taking the neck off, and I have a video that I just cut today on the thought process and the planning that goes into actually putting this neck back on. How much am I going to take off the heel? In this one, we're going to actually put it on. I've done this before. I've got another video, long video, where I put a neck on. But I'm going to try to make this one precise. There's really nothing different about an authentic than any other Martin, except for the fact that it has hide glue. I'm going to use fish glue, which is going to be fine. It's going to bond. In fact, I already did this one, and I already used fish glue, and it bonds to the hide glue. It's fine. It's great stuff. What we're going to focus here is on the process of getting that neck angle where I want it. So the first thing I'm going to do here, take my blue tape, and I'm going to stick it on my sweatshirt here to remove some of the tack. You notice I'm back in a sweatshirt. It's getting cool again. It's about, well, it's 63 degrees in the shop here. Last night it was 36 degrees outside. So it's getting cool here. This is to protect the top while I do this, to protect the finish while I do it. The finish is more durable than you think. But I still don't like rubbing the sandpaper directly on this right now. So I'm putting these strips of tape on here like this. And as you can see down here, there's a little bit exposed. But what happens is the tape right here in this V is going to hold my sanding strips away from that. There's going to be very minimal scratching or anything down there. Very minute. You could put another piece of tape down here if you wanted to. I don't bother. We're not going to take much off of this neck. So here's the neck. Here's our victim. First thing you want to do, which I kind of have already done, and this is not my usual bench to do this. This one's a little higher than I like. I like the bench behind me, but the camera mount is better over here. First thing you're going to do is put this on. You're going to eyeball this junction here, and you're going to make sure that your neck is actually sitting on there. You don't want it sitting like this. This is an exaggeration. Let me pop that camera up just a little bit. Let me pop it up just a bit. There we go. You don't want your neck sitting up like this. This is an exaggeration. But you don't want a gap. You want this neck pop right on there. All right, first thing I'm going to do then, I'm going to lay the straight edge down here, and I'm just going to take an eyeball on it. And I've already calculated how much I want to do this. I don't know the exact gap down here, but I know it's going to probably go to the top of the saddle. I just want to use this as a starting estimation gauge. It is not any kind of rule, firm and fast rule. This is just to give me something to watch. Okay? So it's about right here. It's got a little bit of a gap down there, probably 30 thousandths of an inch. It's going to go. All right, now, I've got this on here. I'm happy with that. I'm going to start sanding. What I do, and again, this bench is just a little high. I have sanding strips right there, 150 grit sandpaper, 120, whatever you want, around that region. I have strapping tape on the back of it. I've tried lots of things. I've tried Stu Mac. In fact, I've got them over there somewhere. They sell a tough sandpaper grit that they call it. They want it for neck, we said. It's too thick. It's too coarse. And the back of it is too rough. Strapping tape is going to be slick. It's really strong. I almost never break one of these. I have broken a couple of them, but rarely. Strapping tape, that's all the thick they are. How thick is that? Half an inch. That's all you need. It's going to go up under here, which I'm going to show you. You're going to pull the neck off to the side. You're going to stick the strip under here like this. Like this. I need another camera. Getting this on film is the hardest thing of the whole deal, because I'm over here, you're over there. I'm trying to hold this neck together. It's not this cumbersome in real life, okay? Got that. I've got this strip up under the neck, like that. Okay? And then all I'm going to do, get this guitar nice and solid here, is pull it. I put a little bit of pressure on the back of the neck here, so you can take your neck and you're putting a little bit of pressure on the front, which puts a little bit of pressure on the heel. You are automatically going to cut this neck at an angle. In other words, your strip is here, right? So even though it goes all the way up to the top here, the instant you pull, you have left the sandpaper zone. You're not doing anything here. You're sanding here, you're sanding here. This area here is going to get the full amount of sandpaper. This is going to get less and less. It's just going to get barely any. You're automatically going to put an angle on that heel, okay? It's not like you're sanding the whole thing evenly. You can't if you use your strip. You're just going to go, whoop, it's going to automatically cut an angle on there. It's on the body, so it's going to automatically form the neck to the body. And when we get done, we're going to go back and we're going to do that even a little bit better. So what I'm going to do here, you're going to have to take my word for it. I'm just going to show you the time that it takes to do this. Your heel needs to be clean of glue. I give it about 5 strips. And I don't even pull the strip all the way out, because I don't have to put it back in. I just pull it out and I push it back in with my finger. I give it about 5 strips per side, blow the dust out of there. Put it in. Pull. Pull on the right here. I got my hand on the neck block, so I'm not going to crack anything. It's not taking much tension to do this. I'm also kind of, if you notice, I'm pulling this strip down just a little bit. You don't want to round the edge of the heel. So if you pull it up like this, you're going to round the edge of the heel. Pull it down. This is what the tape is protecting the finish from. Tape is protecting the finish. We're not taking much off of this. 16 thousandths of an inch. I'm going to do that. And then I'm going to come back in and I'm going to put it right here at the heel. Like this. And I'm going to do the same number of strips right on the edge of the heel to get the little pieces that didn't get caught by the overlap of the strip. As soon as you do this once, you're going to see what I mean. Now I'm going to check it. I check it about every 5. Come in here. And I'm gaining, but I'm not going too fast. I'm going to start at the same side this time. This is not a very aggressive neck reset. We're only doing a minor adjustment on this. So it's going to go fairly easily and fairly quickly. If I was doing a more aggressive neck reset, like taking 30 or 40 thousandths of an inch off, this would take a lot longer, and I might use a sanding stick. I've got a stick, piece of wood. It's got sandpaper glued to it, and I might go in there and put it in a vise, and I might sand it to give myself a head start. But I'm always going to come back into these strips. As soon as I think I'm within about 15 thousandths of an inch of where I want to be, I start using these strips. The sanding strips will sand the neck straight, and that's not what you want, because this body has some sort of curve to it. And so your sanding strips is just to take off a lot of material quickly. I don't find that any kind of jig or mechanical thing or using a chisel too much. I don't find that necessary at all. If I was building and I had to take off 100 thousandths of an inch, then it might be. The most I have ever done on a neck reset is about 65 thousandths of an inch, and those are rare. And I usually ride on the sheet. That's a lot. 70s Martin, I typically am taking around 35 thousandths. That's a very common amount, 30, 35 thousandths. This is about half of what I normally do. And I'm just taking a look at that. I'm definitely moving that. At this point, Time to put it in the jig. So I got to set up again because I need it out of the way. That's why normally I'd have this jig set up and I would go to this bench behind me, which is about 6 inches lower. So it lets me get down to here and I can see what I'm doing a little bit better. And I just go back and forth between these two benches over here and do it, but whatever. I'm going to suffer for your sake today. Well, we're going to put this on. Should be already pretty set up. This guitar, that's wood, that's not going to cause anything trouble. Clearing the stop button. Because this neck is so loose, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use a clamp here, which I don't normally do, just to hold this fingerboard on. There we go. It's just to hold the neck on so it doesn't pop off, because this neck is really loose right now. It doesn't have any shims in it or anything. I already cleaned all the shims out. And we're going to get our E's. You can see that. This is why I keep the E's as the last set to go and the first one off. So I can get over there and get them. Do that. Pop that in there. Pop that in. String winder, calculator out of the way. A little tension. I got a whole video on the use of this jig. Go watch that if you haven't. You'll understand what it's doing. I'm looking at the alignment of the E. I haven't touched the top of the heel right up here. Haven't touched that. The alignment was good when it came off. It's going to be good now, but I'm just looking at it. Okay. With a little bit of tension here, we want to see just over 60 thousandths of an inch, like 62. I want that string to just clear the 60. So here's 60 thousandths of an inch of feeler gauges. And we're going to come over here to the 12th fret. Bang! I mean, I'm on. That's it. I did a pretty good job of estimating that. So let me double check this, okay? Because I'm suspicious. I've gotten at this before. I've nailed it the first time plenty of times because I've done this so much. I have a good feel for how long this takes. I'm going to make sure that it's not high right here. I'm going to make sure that neck is in fact sitting on there nice and snug. I'm just going to look at it. There's no gap down there. Looks good. Check it again. 60. And the next one is a 76. Yep. Okay. 62. It's got just a tiny bit in there. We're not done yet, though. So it's going to go down just a hair more. That's what happens. Loosen these up. Okay, now I gotta move the jig, and like I said, I would normally, we can leave it there. I think it's not in the way right now. Pop the neck off. I'm not even gonna take the strings off. I'm just gonna set it here. I'm going to take the tape off. I saw an ad one time, a long time ago, for a Telecaster, Relic Telecaster, you know. Excellent condition. How do you know? What we're going to do now is we're going to do a final fitting on that neck. So instead of pulling the paper all the way out, I'm just going to do these little short strokes right here. And that's what's going to settle the neck down into the body here to really get a good fit. So I'm going to put it on here, little short strokes, just like that. I'm putting more even pressure on it now. You know, before I was pulling it back to the heel. Sometimes if I need to take a little off the front for some reason, I'll put a little more pressure on the front. But right now I'm trying to push down pretty square on that neck. Just short strokes like this. That's where you get your really good neck to body fit. And I don't have the tape under here, so we're not going to do a lot of strokes. We're not going to scratch it. That's about it. 3 or 4 of them. This one's already pretty good because I didn't take much. As you do this, you can feel where the sandpaper is grabbing. When it grabs over the whole neck, you'll have a lot of pressure. When it goes pretty easy, you've got pressure at just one spot here. I can also look at the dust. See, I can look at that dust pattern. And I can see how good of a fit I'm getting. If you've got dust piled up at one end, you know, one spot, you've got a high spot right there. Okay, if this were the Collings, I'd probably go down to a much finer grit, because one time I was doing a neck reset on a Collings, and I called them up and I spoke to Steve McCreary, and I told him, I need to know what you guys are doing, because I don't want Bill to ever see this guitar and say, who the heck did this neck reset? You know, I wanted it to be one that Bill wouldn't even notice. So Steve went down and got me the specifications and everything. The sandpaper. Now, I'm going to look at it. I'm going to move it around. I'm going to get my light correct. Take the dust out of here. Put this on. And I'm just going to look at it. Looks pretty good. I'm going to come to the end. I'm going to make sure the heel is evenly across the body and doesn't have any ridges in it. When you use sanding sticks, you'll sometimes get a hump in the heel right here where your sanding stick was not quite straight. This one looks pretty good. Yeah, that finish on the heel is wanting to peel. It's definitely a thin finish. It's definitely thin. Wow. That looks good. Okay. I like the fit. Now, we're going to put shims in here in the neck heel. And they're going to take up the slack. Now, you need to, here's my thing on the shims, okay? Put the neck on here and wiggle the body forward. And you can see how much gap you have. Right there. That's quite a bit of gap. Experience just tells me about how much of a shim I'm going to need. I've done this a lot of times. I also notice it rocking pretty evenly all the way up, which I don't like. It should be a little tighter up at the top. Now I'm going to hold it down here at this end. I'm going to lift the heel up off of here. It's coming off the body just a little bit, which is why I was having trouble keeping it on the jig. The neck is just a little bit loose up there at the top. And I might run a shim all the way up there, which I don't normally do. But in this case, I want it snug. All right, let's talk about the way that your dovetail works a little bit. There's no reason whatsoever, in my humble opinion, to shoot for a fit up in here, other than the fact I don't want the neck falling off the guitar. You will not shim the entire neck heel up there. Because as you can see, when you string it up here, this force is pulling forward. So the front half of this dovetail, it's about right here, wants to pull forward. The back half of it is what's pulling up. So if I simulate string tension right here, you're going to see it pulls up in the back. But the front is pulling down. So the neck does not, under string tension, does not want to come up like this. See, this is the opposite. So there's no use making a tight shim right here, because for one thing, it's going to give you a false reading. You can end up getting the dovetail tight up at the top part, and it'll be loose down at the bottom, and then it'll pivot forward, and you won't get your neck reset tight. So when I put a shim on, I focus on the bottom half of this dovetail. Most of the time, you'll put one in, and it'll be pretty snug up here at the top. But this one is not. This one's a little bit loose. So I might end up putting a tiny little shim up there just to keep it from falling off when I'm working on it. But the neck's natural tendency is from this pivot point about right here. This part is going to pull forward into the body. This part is the part you're really going to capture, and it's pulling backwards. So if you put a lot of shim up in here, it's just going to pull into the neck. I know this from doing bolt-on necks. You could have a bolt right here, and it wouldn't really matter how tight you got these shims, because the bolt is pulling in. It's pulling it away from the dovetail. So you got a dovetail like this, and that bolt is pulling the neck in, pulling it away from the dovetail. This kind of dovetail, it actually puts together. You see the neck is pulling forward, and it's pulling the dovetail into itself. So it's pulling these shoulders into these shoulders here. And that's how a compound dovetail works, is it pulls that into it. Whereas a bolt-on neck is pulling it into the body, into the neck heel. You tighten those bolts and it's pulling it this way. The compound dovetail is actually pulling this portion that way. So that's your most important shims. And I've seen this lots of times where people put shims all the way up in here, and they get a false fit to where the middle of the neck fits tight, and that's as far as they can get it, and they think they've got it tight. But over time, it starts rotating out, and you get a gap down in here again. So you want to prevent that. You want to put your shims about right in here. Now, because this one's a little bit loose, I might run a very, very thin shim right up in here just to help keep it snug, but I want to make sure that it's not binding up in there. I absolutely want to make sure it's not binding. So I actually might start this set of shims first. Put those in here, and then make sure that neck goes all the way down in there, and then put these shims in here. These are the ones that tighten it, okay? You think about that, you work on it. When you're doing this for your first couple times, you can definitely take and put chalk in here, blue chalk or red chalk, and you can put it on in the dovetail in the body, and you can put the neck in there, and you can look at your chalk marks here, and you can see where it's hitting. Over time, you'll get experience with that. So when we put the shims on, we're going to see that if it's too tight right up in here, that I'm going to be able to pull that neck forward just a little bit. And I know it's binding there. So I would put the neck on like this, and I'll put pressure on the front of the neck, and it'll feel tight right here, but I'll be able to see a tiny air gap right here. If I can see any air gap here at all, then the bottom part of the shim is not making good solid contact. And you can also tell when you go to pop it loose like that, if it's not tight down in the bottom, pulling in, your neck will come out fairly easily, especially if you get a little bit of push, and then you can really get it to rock on the bottom. If you get a good fit down in the bottom of this dovetail, you won't get air until neck comes off, okay? We watched this neck come off, and I know I had a good fit on it because it was tight. You know, it didn't want to come, and then pow, it was loose. Well, that's when the bottom of the dovetail moved up into the bigger area, and then it's loose all of a sudden, you see. If it slides its way up, that means it's tied up in the middle. You see, that means it's tied up at the top, and it's not making much change, and then it's off. So that's your deal right there, okay? So here we go. I'm going to get some shim stock. We're going to cut it. We're going to put them in. This is the shim stock I've been using. It's mahogany, more or less. mahogany and some other stuff. This was made for cigars. It's for cigar humidors. You can buy this on Amazon, according to my my customer, Mr. Higgins, who's been sending me all this fun stuff. He sent me the little jigs. He sent me the drill press that we just had recently. And he found some of this stuff on Amazon. I got this from a friend of mine that has a cigar shop. And he's the one that suggested to me. I had no idea. I was using a plane and cutting out stock. And he gave me some of this. And a bunch of it, you know. He said, you should try this and see if it works for neck resets. Oh my gosh, it's awesome. And you can just cut it with scissors here. Danny. Thank you, Danny. That's amazing. You know, you keep your ears open for people who have ideas that you're not aware of because they work in some different field or some different specialty. What I'm going to do, I'm going to take a little bit of this. Like I said, I'm going to work at the top for a minute here. So I'm going to cut off 2 little pieces about like this. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put them up at the top. All right, now this is sacrilege probably, but especially on an authentic. But I use super glue to glue my shims on. It's faster, it's quicker. I don't think the neck cares whether it's super glue. Super glue is hard stuff. Somebody criticized me for shaking my super glue one time. Well, if you ever use colored super glues, you better shake it because the color pigment will separate. And I just get in the habit of doing it. You know, it's not going to mix it. You know, if this pigment separates, you know, who knows what separates in this. This is Stumax brush on super glue. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to brush it on, number 20. And I'm going to stick this one in that pie here. And I know these are going to be too thick. I'm going to try 1. Sometimes you can get by with 1. It's going to kick the neck angle over though. So let's see. I want to see how it's going to fit with 1. I don't want to do a whole lot of sanding on this. So I've got 1 shim up at the top. This is a perfect example of a false neck reset shim. So this one, I can't get it in there. So that tightened up. I'm going to hold it down right here. And I'm going to pull it up at the top. And there's still a gap right here, but the neck is also still pulling up. So where it's binding then is right here in the middle. But if this is tight up at the top, you can reach down here and that is exactly the same looseness. So what I'm driving at, and you'll see this if you ever play with it, is if you run shims the whole way, you can end up with a situation where it's tight up here but loose down here. And when you glue it together, it's going to look great and everything, but over time, it's going to creep out of there. You should not ever rely upon the glue to hold this thing together. It's got to fit with the shims. So I'm not sure I like that shim. I'm going to rip it out of there. I guess it can stay because it's not making much trouble right now. Let me sand it down. I'm going to get my sandpaper strips and I'm going to sand that down right here at the bottom of it. Because it's not fitting in. It's not going down all the way, but it's not tight either. So that's not a good situation. I'm just going to peel it off of there. I could have just stuck it in there and tried it, but it's just as easy just with glue to hold it so it doesn't shift on you. Let's leave that in right there. Tightened up the very top like this. This is just a very small half a shim. Right up there at the top. We're going to leave that in. Get rid of the bottom. Let's see how that fits now with just a little bit of a shim up at the top. Okay, so now it's binding. Now it's binding up at the top. It's not going all the way, not going down all the way, but it's tight, so it's taking very, very, very little shim to do this. I'm going to remove some more of it. What I'm doing here, again, is I'm working on just this piece, and I know this is loose, and I'm working on the fit up here before I go to this so that I have control over the pieces of the neck. Put that in. Tight. Not taking much shim. But I'm getting my goal done here. I'm getting the top of it snugger, you know, so it doesn't fall out on me when I'm working on it. Because I don't like that. I'm using a StewMac micro chisel, and I'm just going in here and scraping it. Pulling a little bit of wood off of there. This is what our shim's looking like now at the top. Tiny little guy. I'm going to cover the sandpaper and smooth it. Just get rid of any rough spots. Make sure it slides in there easier. And still just a little bit proud. I'm looking through the light here. I can also see that it's hitting right here. Yeah, I've got a little bit of a glue out there. But that's good. I'm going to pull it. No wiggle yet. Just a tiny bit of wiggle. So watch this. Just a little piece of wood right here. Oh yeah. In the way. Keeping it from going down. We're going to get rid of that. There we go. Little piece of glue right there. I'm going to sand it just a little bit more. Actually, I think I need to get right up here at the top of this. Right there. It's ridiculous how precise these shims have to be. I swear, sometimes I feel like I can breathe on them and make them go down enough. So we're going to put this in here. I like that. Oh yeah. Top's fitting really good. I got just a tiny bit of wiggle room right there. So I know that it's not pulling down on it. It's holding my neck in a little bit better. Now I'm going to look at this. I'm going to lift it up. That's going to take pretty much a full shim to get that right. So let's set this over here. Once again, I'm already working on this one bench for the video. If it wasn't you people watching, I'd be using all three of my benches, and I would have the guitar over there on that bench. I would be doing shimming stuff over here, and I'd be doing stuff behind me, so I wouldn't have to try to balance a spot for this guitar. Okay, you got to keep that in mind. If it wasn't for this video, yeah, I wouldn't have this mess over here. I'd have this over there, and this here, and that here, and I would be moving between the stations. So things would be a lot cleaner, a lot less possibly damage prone. So I'm taking a big risk doing this video. Alright, where'd my shim go? Here's the wood. Where's the piece I cut? Is this one. I lost it. There's that, there's this. Well, we'll just cut a new one then. Cut me a new shim. I lost the other one. It's on the bench somewhere. Gotta shut up. On these are going to be our actual neck shims. I want these to be about that long. Okay, 2 of them. We're going to do the same deal. Super glue on them. Now on this one, I'm going to use an accelerator. No, yeah, I will. I usually use the accelerator. Just take a little bit of accelerator. Put it on there, get it ready. Wipe it off, make sure we don't get any on there. Take my number 20 brush on. Wipe it on the shim. The brush on doesn't work as good as the accelerator, but it does work. We're going to stick this on here, right on the heel. Boom. Use my thumb. Then I've got a piece of wood that's cut so I can hold it straight. Put it on there. Press. Get it nice and flat. Good. Leave it alone. Okay. Alright. One more. The reason the accelerator doesn't work with the brush on is because the brush on has got something in it to keep it liquidish so that it'll brush on better. And I've noticed the accelerator doesn't work as good. And I happen to read in Stu Mack's literature there, they said don't use their accelerator with the brush on. I thought, no wonder it doesn't work. But it'll work good enough for our purposes. Stick that on. Press it. Okay, let it dry. Put my super glues up. Here's our shims before we start on them. This is what they look like. And I anticipate that I'm going to be taking it down pretty hard up here at the top, okay? I'm going to be taking it down pretty hard right here, and it's going to be pretty tight right down here because this is a uniform shim. It's the same thickness, but the dovetail is getting wider as it goes up, so I know that they shouldn't be the same thickness. The shim has got a taper like this, the way the dovetail works. So if the shim is the same, I guarantee it's going to bind up in here. So before I even start, I'm going to take my sandpaper and I'm going to thin it down up in here, right where it joins the neck, because I know it's got to be thin up there. Also, if you look at this one, you can see that the shim goes all the way down into the heel right there. I don't like that. I like to have a little bit of a gap right down there so that it doesn't bind. So I take my chisel, and I could cut my shims a little bit thinner, but that's where this one ended up, you know. I'm coming with my chisel, and I'm going to knock that off of there. I've just found that I like the fit better. There's a little bit of a gap right up in here. So here, I took that off, that wood off right there. So the shim kind of sits out. It seems to me like they click a little bit better. I'm going to do the same thing over on this side. Knock that off. This is where I earn my money. We got pretty lucky in getting the fit and the angle I wanted, but the shimming business is tedious, and getting the shim to fit is tedious. This is where you're real. Well, not really, because you got to get the angle right. Because if you don't have the angle right to begin with, you're wasting your time. But this is a good. I guess it's all critical, but this is the tedious part for sure. Well, I'm just feathering down the edge here. I'm not even touching the rear of it yet. I'm just feathering the edge here. Okay, I'm going to take that off of there. Yeah, that's good. Okay, so this edge where it joins is now nice and feathered in there. Yeah, that's good. Now we can just do a test fit. And it should hopefully catch down at the bottom. So let's see what we get. Oh yeah, okay. So the neck didn't go in all the way. That's good. Let's go over here. I got us a new camera angle that maybe we can see down onto the dovetail a little bit better here. As I do this. Again, my other table is shorter and it would help, but the lighting's better over here. So, I'm going to put this neck on here like this. I'm going to push it. And then I'm going to try to rock it forward again. And it's no air down here. So I know it's nice and tight down here at the bottom. I don't care about this yet. I want to know what's going on here. And that's tight. So I know it's not binding in the middle. Not binding here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold it here. I'm going to lift the neck. And I can see it rocking all the way except down at the tip. So now I know that the shim is grabbing down here at the bottom and not up here in the middle. If it was grabbing in the middle, I would be able to rock it and see a little bit of a gap here, but I would not be able to rock it backwards. So, we're looking good. That's what I want to see here. Now comes the really tedious part, the shimming part, or the sanding. This is a handy stick for this. It's got a bevel on it. It's got sandpaper on both sides. What this bevel lets just go down into here. And so I can come in here and sand like this. There's nothing here. I'm not sanding the neck at all. I'm getting the shim nice and straight. And I know we're going to have to take it quite a bit, because experience doing this tells me we're pretty tight. As much fingerboard was sticking up off the top, but we've got to make it go down probably 1/8 of an inch. It's just going to be a bit. Go a little faster. This is a little faster, and then I'll smooth it with that one. I can move this faster. I don't get quite as level, but I'll level it out with the stick when I get close to it. So. All right, see what we got. Oh, getting close. I want to show you how much we got here. See the gap right here? That's what you're looking at. If you can't see it on camera, if you ever try to do this yourself, that's the gap you want to look for. And I like it almost on. Everybody likes a little different gap, and I like it almost on with maybe 0.010 of an inch. Proud. Then it's going to press in. I definitely don't want to have to try to press it too much, because my shims fit pretty tight. Now, I know it's tight down at the bottom. Yeah, it's tight down at the bottom. I'm going to lift it up here this way. I'm going to lift it this way. And it's moving. So I know it's still tight down at the very bottom. And I'd like to get, I don't want it all focused. You know, I don't want it focused on the last 1/16 of an inch. I want it focused on the last 1/3, you know. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to deliberately come in and I'm going to take a little bit off the very tip right here, which is a little risky because if you blow that, then there goes everything. You want it tight down there, but you want to spread that load. But I'm going to come in here and sand this a little bit. Right there on that focus spot. My dust out of there. Put that over. I can actually see a smooth spot right there. You know, like you use chalk, you can actually see a smooth spot. If you look at your dust carefully, it works just like chalk. So it's binding just a little bit right down at the very, 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 very tip here. Work that off. Now, I'm going to go ahead and take the stick, and I'm going to make sure it's straight and smooth. Just a little. That's it. Over here. Straight, smooth. You want to make sure you get your dust out of the corners up here, because it will pile up in there and it'll keep the neck from going down. We're getting pretty close to the final fit now, so football game, the final 4, huh? Good. I heard it creak. I pushed on it pretty good right there. So let's see what happens if I try to flex it. No go. And I'm trying to lift it here. It's getting pretty stout. It's getting sturdy. It's going to be hard to get it off right now. You're definitely getting there. I'm going to stick with this right now. I'm going for the whole thing now because I got a pretty good fit, so now I'm going to be lowering the whole shim. I got the fit away from the tip, and I'm getting more fit on the whole thing. Now I'm working at lowering the whole entire shim evenly, as evenly as I can, you know. It's tedious. Some people use paper for their shims. I don't like to use paper. I've fixed so many neck resets where they use paper, and the paper will tear. It's just not strong. I will once in a while use paper when I need just a tiny little bit, you know, of something, and I can't even get wood that thin. Like maybe 3 or 4 times I've used just a tiny little scrap of paper, but not rare, not usually. Let's see what we got. Looking good. A little bit more maybe. You want to check both sides, because if your shim is fatter on one side or the other. So let's say you have a little bit more room over here than you do over here. That means the shim is thicker over here and it's pushing the neck up. So let's take this neck off, and I'll use an exaggeration. Pitch yaw and axis. If the shim is thicker, it would push the neck this way, and that would give you a bigger gap up in here. So if the shim is thicker here, it would push the neck this way, and you'd get a bigger gap here. One small trick you can use sometimes is if you need to move the whole neck down the center line, you can sometimes get by with putting one shim on the side that you want to scoot it. So one shim right here, no shim here, would move the entire neck this direction. We didn't have to do any of that, but you can do that if you need to. But you got this angle, you got this angle, and then you've got, what other angle do you have on this thing? You got that one, and this one, and that's, you can go this way. Yeah, that way. So you can get, if your heel was cut more here, then the neck would go this way, and your strings would go crooked. You can straighten up a neck that way. So you can angle it this way, back and forth. You can angle it this way, and then you can angle it this way. Most of the time people think of a neck crochet as being this way, but there's also all these other things to think about. So if you need to correct the neck angle, you can do it. You can do it. You just got to know how. So what I'm looking at is both gaps right here. Up under the fingerboard. This gap and this gap. How do they look? I'm getting my hands on it here. I'm giving it a pretty good clamp. I would not hesitate to measure that with feeler gauges, you know. A little more. Pull up on the neck again. How am I doing on my fit here? Good. And then try to pull up on the front, and it's giving a little bit. We're getting a pretty good even shim fit there. Okay. One last trick you can do. We know that we're going to be using a razor blade to scrape, because you got to scrape the sandpaper stuff off of here so your glue will get a good adhesive. When you get this close, you can come in with your razor blade and you can go ahead and start scraping, because scraping is going to remove a little bit of wood. And it might remove enough to where we get it. So if you go into the sandpaper and you get it where you want it, and then you go scrape, you may take off too much wood. You can do this. You can scrape this. Scraping will also help level the shim. I want a full razor blade for this. This is just a piece. I want a full razor so I can get my hand out of here. Okay, there we go. So I get my fingers on it better. And I can brace my fingers on this to make sure I keep it level. So I'm scraping that down. Then I'm going to come in and I'm scraping the body. Because the same deal, I use sandpaper in this and I need to get it out of there. I'm going to use a scraper and I'm going to come into the body here and pull. And it removes some stuff. And that much dust might mean the difference between this neck fitting perfectly and being loose. So the trick here is don't wait too long to scrape. When you get it pretty close, start scraping and see how your fit goes. Let's see what we got now. We are good. Brought it down just enough right there. When I clamp it, it's going to take it. I'm going to hold it as tight as I can here. I'm going to pull up. A little bit of pop. So when I clamp it, it's going to be in there good. It's not creaking as much. See, I have to really get that force in there to get that last bit. There you go. All right. we're ready to glue. I've already scraped it. The last thing I need to scrape there is the fingerboard. Just going to get that. And this is hide glue. I use fish glue again. It's going to stick to itself. But I'm going to scrape it, make sure it's clean, and make sure there's nothing like this. It's going to be in the way of anything. With that clean. This is where I use my broken razor pieces, like this one. Come back in here and do this one. This looks really clean. I don't see much problem. I've seen really dirty sections here. So, I'm going to get my pen. I'm going to write my name in there. All right, 2020. And September 2023. I don't do this all the time, but I do it on this authentic for some reason, you know. Put my name on the neck pocket in there. I just want to be responsible for it, I guess. Alright, get all my junk together here. One thing I'm going to do, because this is already hide glue, I'm going to get damp towel. I'm going to moisten that. I can feel it sticking. I'm going to moisten that. This is probably fine. I'll probably scrape most of that out. But I'm going to get that a little bit wet. That'll help it. Help the glue soak in. And you could heat it. There's nothing wrong with heating it. Get my clamps. My little bench is getting tight here because, again, just don't want to do. I got a hairdryer. I'm going to heat this up. Alright, I use the hairdryer just to warm this stuff up. You don't have to warm fish glue, but because it's cold in here, fish glue does work better when it's warmer. You know, it's just more liquid instead of gooey. So I just heated it up. I've got that all clean. I've got that good to go. We're going to put a smear fish glue on there. Yeah, it runs nice. And the glue does not hold this together. It's the mechanical part of the dovetail. So you don't need much glue. Just a smear. Smear it on there. I don't even want to see it running. A little bit on there. I like to put a little bit in the corner right there. Smear that around. That's probably a little too much. Let's get that out of there. My hair dry out of the way. That up before we even get started. That's glue. I would never use more than that, and that's probably actually a little bit too much right now, but that's okay. This is warm. Was warm. Still warm enough. Let me get just a little shot of heat here real quick. Put it down hot. It's good. There we go. It goes on. First thing I do is hold it down tight to the body, which it shouldn't be moving anyways. But you're going to press it down right here. Take one of these clamps. Put it on there. Clamp that dovetail in there. This is just temporary. There's your rubber. They're not going to scratch the controller. Don't worry about that. Okay? Take these two. This one goes on the inside. I've got this one. That's a deep clamp. Sets in here. So catch that one. This has got a little bit of a curve to it. Clamp it. Snug it down. Now, pop this one. Get it out of the way for right now. Got this one, which is a piece of plywood. Stiff. Set it right there. Take these cam clamps, which I really like. A lot of pressure. Push down. Tighten. Push down. Push down. Tighten. Snug it. Take a look at it. It's good. Man, that pressed it right into it. Okay. Alright, those are on. You got some glue squeeze out right here. Take the same towel. Get in there. Get that glue squeeze out wiped up. Get right here at the end of the extension. Now, that might be enough, but I have noticed over the years that if I take these clamps I just took off and put them right here on the sound hole brace and right on the edge of this clamp it, it'll pull that extension down that last little piece. And you can tell because you get squeeze out most of the times. Right there. So I got just a little bit of squeeze out, which means it pushed it down that last little bit right there. Okay? This one's a little too far forward, I think, right there, right there. I don't need a lot of pressure on it. You know, I don't need a screw clamp for that. I just want to put some pressure on it. The reason I use 2 clamps here instead of 1 in the center is because I can change the amount of pressure on each end. So once in a while, I see this end here just a little bit high and needs a little bit more pressure. Put a little pressure on that, maybe even let a little bit off for this one in order to bring the neck over. Just that hair, you know. But I like having the 2 clamps so I can control the amount of pressure on either side of the neck rather than one that goes into the center and pushes down in the center and then you're relying on pressure out there. I like to push down on the edges. And then it's going to get the center because the strip of wood bends across that thing. So it's just what I've had the best success with. And I think that also by putting a piece of wood right there between the 14th and 15th fret, I have very, very, very few problems with the so-called 15th hump. I always have a really flat neck right there. I'm putting pressure on that. I mean, some people, oh, there's too many clamps, you know. You know, I don't care. I mean, is there a law against using clamps? I've got the clamps for a specific purpose. This one pushes down right here so it gets the fingerboard extension in here, keeps that down, doesn't let it pop up. These 2, like I said, I added them at the very end in order to get that last little bit of extension. Because one time I reset a Collins guitar and I wasn't using these. And the customer said, yeah, it's just a little bit up at the very end. And I thought, oh man, I mean, Bill would wring my neck if he saw that. Plus, you know, the customer didn't like it. So I started paying a little bit more attention to that. And I realized one day that if I put the clamps on the end here, that it would get that end. And so why not? I mean, I got the clamps, might as well use them. I'm not one of those guys that likes to put one clamp on the bridge and push the bridge into the top. I don't like to do that. I like to clamp it here, 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 and then right here on these 2 points where they typically go. And I want clamp like that. I don't want to push down on it. You know, there's a lot of great luthiers that do that, and I don't. I'm an overkill. All right, so there's our neck reset. Now this is going to dry overnight. It's a little bit cooler than here right now. It gets cool in the evening. The fish skin needs to dry. It likes warmer conditions. So, you know, I could put strings on it this evening, but I think it's too late. This is like 2 or 3 o'clock already. So I'm in no hurry. So it's going to sit overnight, and then I'll string it up in the morning. I'll just leave it on this bench. This is usually where I park the neck resets for the night. You know, after I've done them over there, I bring them over here and I park them. Gosh, that's a neck reset. I mean, that's the process. We got lucky on this one because we got the neck angle, you know, pretty quick. Sometimes I might have to go 3 or 4 times that long before I get the neck angle I want on the thing. Sometimes they're going to be off a little bit this way, and I need to scoot the ease over, and I would take a little bit off at the appropriate top, just a little bit. A little bit goes a long ways at the top of the neck. Take a little bit off, and then I got to kind of hold the neck different in order to resand the top to come back in again. And that can add 2 to 3 times to the fitting of the neck, but you can bring your ease back in level again. You'd be surprised how many guitars are off, especially if the nut's off, and then you go and do a new nut, then you find out that when the E string is off, and so, you know, you just got to adjust this one. You got to adjust that angle in. Rarely have I had to adjust this angle. What I have found on that one is mostly on vintage Martins, like very vintage, like 30s. I had one that was an OM 28 from 1931, 32. It was the first neck reset I'd ever done. And, you know, I don't think customers are super happy with it, but I had a reason for doing all that. And what happened is when I put the neck back on straight and everything looked good, the treble side was like way up here and the bass side was almost nothing. The neck was skewed this way very badly. I don't know why exactly. Some vintage Martins are like that, but the neck would be really, let me get a stick. The neck will be really skewed like this. And so what happens then is the saddle will be super tall on this side where you're trying to get your action, and it'll be super low over here, or the other way around. This one's up, and you're trying to clear it to get the action, so your saddle is really tall, and then it comes down to nothing over here. And it's bad if it goes the opposite way that you normally want the saddle. So normally you want the saddle to be a little bit higher on the bass side and then come down on the treble. But I've seen it bad the other way, where the bass side ended up being massive and the treble side was nothing. And that's terrible because then there's no break angle whatsoever over the treble, and the bass side is way too sharp, and you're just going to have trouble. Plus it looks ugly and it doesn't it right. So you've got to angle the neck this way or that way in order to get a fairly even saddle. So on that particular OM, you know, how do you correct that angle? You see? That's tricky to correct this angle. You come in here and you work on the top, at the very top right here, and you bring this over or you bring this over. To correct this angle, you simply work the bottom of the shim. So you correct this, you bring it down or you bring it up or whatever you need to do, you know. But to correct this one is hard. What I ended up doing was putting a shim under one side of the fingerboard. Just one side of the fingerboard. Now, if you're paying attention to this, if you rotate your neck this way, what happens to the heel? See, the heel comes off. You see? So if you bring it this way, then your heel comes down over here. So your heel becomes off center. And on that particular OM28, I had to rotate it so far in order just to get a functional balanced saddle. I mean, I wasn't even trying to get it perfectly even. I was just trying to get something on the bass side and not have the treble side be a quarter of an inch high, you know? I mean, it really, it was a geometric problem. So, you know, again, people complain about Martins today. Oh, they can't get it right. Well, that was in 1933 OM28, back in the golden days, you know. And I don't know if they shipped it out with some monstrously high action or if they didn't care back in those days or what. But that was, in fact, the first neck reset that guitar had ever had. And the action, I mean, was, you know, a quarter of an inch high. It was so high that in measuring it, I didn't even see that problem. The strings literally, I could slide my finger under the fingerboard on both sides. So when you got it down to a functional action, then all these discrepancies started really popping up. And I'm like, well, how am I going to fix that, you know? So I put a shim under one side of the fingerboard. That cocked it over, but that also brought the heel over so that the heel was sitting like this on the guitar. Normally you want your heel straight up and down so it's centered on the guitar and everything looks pretty. But when you take this side and raise it, it brings the heel over. Huh, what's that do to your shims, you know? You sure can't use an even shim because the dovetail is scooted way over to the side over here. Yeah, I mean, it was a problem. So I was trying not to wreck the guitar because, you know, it's an OM28. So I had to do the least amount of damage possible. I ended up, I think, sanding off a little bit on the dovetail side, the actual dovetail, a little bit on the actual dovetail, and then using a big shim on the one side to push the whole thing over so that it would shim down with the shim underneath the fingerboard. So the fingerboard here had a shim on this side to raise it this way, and then I had to put the shim on the dovetail over here in order to make the neck tight. And, you know, it just didn't look really great. I mean, I admit it was not super pretty because you could see down here on the dovetail, you could see the witness mark, you know, from where the heel had shifted. And I mean, we're talking a quarter of an inch by the time you get down to the bottom of the heel. You could see the old mark a little bit. Just it's the only thing I could think of to do, unless I went in there and I took the fingerboard off and replaned the fingerboard, and then put it back down, and that would have been damage to the guitar. You see, the way I did it, I did no damage to the guitar. I put a shim under the neck, which you could remove. I put a shim on the dovetail, which you could remove. You could take that neck off, and you could take both of my shims off, and you could put it right back to stock. And you would have a saddle quarter of an inch high. And I'm not kidding, it was high. I know it was over 200 thousandths of an inch on the treble side, and it was down to something like 60 over on the bass side, which means the string wasn't even touching the saddle. If you put a string in here, a bridge, with no saddle at all, it will clear the bridge by about 50 to 60 thousandths of an inch just because of the curvature of the string. So I had absolutely no pressure on the bass side and this massive tall saddle on the treble side. So that was a very difficult neck reset. I wasn't really personally happy with the results, but I had to do, I tried to do as little damage as possible to the guitar. I think, and there's cosmetic, it worked. I mean, it played great. The action was great. Everything was beautiful except for the cosmetics of looking at that heel shift. You couldn't really see the shim under the heel because it was on this side and not the other side, so you're only looking at one side. You had to look at it this way, and it actually was fairly level over there. You see, I had to level the fingerboard, in other words, and so it looked level over here. And the real cosmetic was looking at that heel being cocked. That was the reason I had to do all that. So to avoid the cosmetics, I think I would have had to shim the fingerboard. I would have had to take the fingerboard off and either drop the whole thing, which means it would have been thin on one side. I would have had a thin fingerboard, or I would have had to shim the whole thing and then level it all out, So I did what I thought was the least invasive solution to the thing, And cosmetically, it didn't look pretty. And I don't think the owner was happy with it because he never sent me another guitar. But it was an extremely challenging record set as far as the decisions that had to be made on that thing, you know? You know, if you take the fingerboard off and do some kind of thing to it, then you've really destroyed the value of the thing. You know, like I said, all of my stuff could have been backed up, and you could have restored it back to 100% originality, which on a 1933 OM28 is not a small thing. So, just saying, you think you got the neck reset thing down, and then you get something like that. You get something like the little finish thing coming off right there, you know. I can go on and on stories on these. Probably 75% of them are very straightforward, and they just pop right off, and you put them back on, and there's nothing dramatic about them. 70s are, I haven't had any surprises in a long time on 70s. But when you get back into the 30s, and when you get into different brands, you've got some surprises. There's a particular brand of guitar that uses a double X bracing back here. And I worked on one of those. It was the single most difficult neck reset I have ever in my life done. First of all, I had to do a bridge plate on it. And the bridge plate sat in between those double X bracing, completely set in there perfectly, and it was plywood. So you had to take it out layer by layer, and you couldn't get a chisel in there because it was surrounded by braces. So I had to get in there and actually peel the layers of bridge plate off, heat them up, peel a layer off. It took me hours to get that out of there and put a maple bridge plate in. Then it was time to take the neck reset apart, take the neck off. So I started steaming it, and it was not coming off. I mean, it was stick, you know. I could tell it was loose, but it would hang. I said, it's got a splinter in there, you know. Something split, and there's a splinter holding it. So, if I recall, I think I ended up taking part of the fingerboard off, like up here. I took the fingerboard off so I could see it. And I realized that what had happened, I didn't see this till I got it all the way out. There was a piece of wood jammed up like this. It was jamming into the dovetail, and it wouldn't come off. So I got feeler gauges, and I shoved everything down there and straightened it out. I used the feeler gauges as a wedge, and I pulled it out. And when I did, I realized that the dovetail was put together from pieces of wood. It was not cut like a Martin dovetail where it's cut out of the wood. This dovetail was put together with pieces of wood. So all of the wedges and all of the angles were created with glued on angles of wood so that when the steam hit it, it just fell apart. The neck block on a Martin is carved out of one piece of wood. It's cut, one piece of wood. So you've got a back, and then you've got two wings for the dovetails. And on this guitar, every one of those pieces was a separate piece of wood glued together. So it fell apart. And it's like, oh man, look at that thing. And I'm like 4 hours deep just in the neck reset, just taking the neck off. Oh, steam, sweat. I filled up the steamer time. I'd never seen this thing ever. So I got it all apart, finally. I immediately glued everything back together. The glue was still wet and everything. Put it back together, clamped it up using, this kind of thing here. I had these handy, and I stuck them on there, and I glued it back together. Clamps. Clamped the neck block back in there. And I said, the only thing that's going to hold this together is a bolt. A bolt running through the heel of the neck, running through the front of that neck block, and it'll hold everything together. And otherwise, I don't think it's going to hold. The owner said, that's fine. He just wanted to play. And I mean, it was amazing that I could even get this thing going. So that's what I did. I put a stud inside the neck. I went through the dovetail. I went through that into the heel, and I put a screw-in stud, and then I just basically converted the thing to a bolt-on neck. And the bolt would hold the dovetail together, hold the neck block together, hold the dovetail together, hold the neck under there, and glue in there. And as far as I know, it's still holding together because I'm not touching it again. That's when I decided not to do certain brands of guitars. That was a headache. That was the worst one ever. I got a top 5 list. All right, but some of the owners are still friends, and so I'm not going to go into that. You got to be ready for these little tricks, and you got to know how to control that dovetail, what angles you're looking for. We're going to string this up tomorrow, and hopefully I got my angle right, and hopefully our action's going to be right. I feel pretty comfortable about it. I mean, I'm not unhappy with anything at this point, so I'm going to stop this video, and tomorrow we'll take a video of me crying.